Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your tech questions and media production questions every day. Jason Bache is our reader today. Jason, what's our first question?
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania writes in a 20-seat lab with Mac Studios, an ATEM feeds 50-inch displays so folks can see my keynote and demos. Sometimes I'd like to show the display from one of the Mac Studios. Would an Apple TV be a good choice? Thoughts?
And Alex Lindsay's going to help you out. Alex?
Yeah, I think that you got two different options there, and I think that the first one I would say is the Apple TV, but then you're expecting the students to find that, and that's fine. They'll get used to it. They just have to share screen, and they'll pop into it. And if you have that set up, it's going to be pretty easy for folks with the Mac Studios. Remember that you do need to leave the Wi-Fi open, even if they're on a wired connection. That's how it does the negotiation. So anyway, I think that could work for you for anybody to share a screen to that screen. Another way to do it is Apple Remote Desktop, which I believe that's going to give you control. So you're going to have a computer that's going to have an output, and then that means you can say, "Hey, I want to show your screen," and then they don't have to think about it. They don't have to connect to it. But ARD is the thing that you want to look at there. It's a little long in the tooth. I don't think they've updated it for a long time, but it's very powerful. It's the lowest latency that we find. So a lot of times we'll use something like Splashtop to get into a computer because it's a little hard to get ARD working, when they're in some other state or something like that. But we usually use it to turn off. And as Guy Cochran said, Apple Remote Desktop in Observe mode, you can pull any of their views to your teacher machine and deliver it. And he put a link in the thing. So I think Apple TV would work. ARD is probably more effective. John Wallace also said that he uses Crestron Air Media is how we do it in their labs. And I think that the Crestron version will be and then John Foltz said that, and he's the one that asked the question, doesn't pass audio. I've never tried to pass audio, so I never thought of that. So it could be the case. In that case, if you're trying to pass audio, then you might want to use the Apple Remote Desktop. If you want to get much more complicated, when we do gaming, they have to watch their monitors, and then we have to watch them. And we wired I don't know if we did not 20, but I think we've done up to 18, and we wired a second monitor out of each one. So we just converted HDMI to SDI, ran it into a switcher. Now you can hit the switcher. You could just be sitting there switching between everybody's, and you'll get the audio there embedded. So if you want to get super geeky about it, mirror one of their the monitor that you want them to share into an HDMI output or USB to HDMI, and then convert it to SDI, and then run it in, and then they're all wired up for it. I don't know how geeky you want to get. I don't know what you're trying to do with it, like what kind of class you're doing. But if you really want to get geeky about it, a 20 by 20 or not a 20 by 20, 20 by 20 router or a switcher could be useful. And John Wallace said this is a perfect use case for 2110.
If Apple Remote Desktop, could you go in with loopback or audio hijack on their machine and repatch it so that it is patching audio? Just a thought off the top of my head.
I've never tried. Robert Green said Splashtop will pass audio depending on the plan you choose for high quality video. The reason that ARD is better, by the way, the way that ARD is better is that it's lower latency, and it's just much easier to control a whole bunch of machines. Splashtop is pretty good at getting onto one machine, in my opinion. The ARD, you see them all. It's really easy to get to them. Guy Cochran or JJ McKenna said NDI capture will also pass audio, and Guy Cochran said NDI studio monitor KVM mode. If I was designing the classroom from scratch and you gave me that mission, I would do it with SDI and a hardware switcher. like that will be it will work every time. Like once it's plugged in and once you set it up, as long as people don't change the configurations of their things, it'll be just you push a button and it just goes.
Hopefully that helped you, John. Next question.
Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas writes in, Sony Alpha 1, 2, you can get one of these for $64.99.99. How will this help you as a media pro? Alpha 1, 2, full-frame mirrorless interchangeable lens with camera model ILCE 1M2, and he has the link to Holtec.
Alex Lindsay.
I would not get that if I had $6,500. I'd get an FX6. Like an FX6 is the right solution for that price. If you're going to be if you want to take pictures, if you want to do stills as well, that's fine. But most of us are video first folks. So if you're doing stills first folks, then you can look at those. But otherwise, I would probably get a FX6 at that price.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, the question is, does it have a rolling shutter? If it does, that would rule it out as a professional. You could use it certainly for YouTube and stuff where the camera's mounted, not moving around very much. But
I think that the only thing I would say about that is that they shot. I mean, I have to admit, they shot Creator with a lot of effects on an FX3 with rolling shutter, and things get shit. It depends on what you're doing. There are correction tools like in Nuke and everything else that can correct for it.
Shutterize
it. Sorry?
You can de-rolling shutter it. Yes.
De-rollerize it. Yeah, exactly. So there is, so I think that it's Sony sells the Alpha 1 as the first anti-flicker, and it does 4K 120. It does a lot of great things. But I think that, I think that would be if I had the money and I was doing video. If you're doing stills, that's another thing. But I will say that, I have an FX30 that I use here. I very much dislike using the still camera form factor in a video environment. It's really frustrating. It's a really frustrating form. We have 10 or 11 of the 6Ks. I've got this one. So I've got a history of using them because they're cost effective, because that's what at that price point we're getting. But it's a really frustrating form factor. It's got weird screens in the back. It's hard to wire up. It's hard to put into a rig. And so at this point now, when I see a camera in that form factor, I can use it as a web camera, but I do not want to put it into a production unit.
Yeah, it doesn't take block batteries easily without lots of
it's very frustrating. It's just like and Blackmagic finally broke down and made the Pixis because everyone just kept on saying, I know that you think that it's some other way, but everyone was giving them feedback of like, we want a box. Went a box. And if they fix roll, they don't have to fix. You have to fix, in my opinion, to really disrupt the market right now. You either have to compete with Sony on autofocus or fix rolling shutter. So I think that Blackmagic's next step would be to have a global shutter version of the Pixis. That would do really well, because they figured out most of their color space issue. A lot of their color science has gotten much better. So.
And just look where the industry has gone. Almost no one's making shoulder mount cameras anymore. That was it there for its era when people had to go remote and put it on their shoulder, and it was heavy and uncomfortable.
I have a rig right here that's got a shoulder mount. You build the rig.
You can build a Tinkertoy rig on the box to do that.
Yeah, you don't need to buy. Yeah, but this form factor is still camera form factor, and that's just really it's a cluster.
Well, I think that's a result of the original 5D Mark II when it turned out to be such an extraordinary video camera. But you're right. It's not the right form factor for shooting video all the time.
I had like 4 5Ds that we shot interviews with for many years. I didn't shoot stills with those until like year 8. Like when they were no longer being used as video cameras. So I don't think that people are using them that way anymore. So. Yeah.
And they had sync ports and all those things that photographers need that a videographer has no use for whatsoever. So it's just extra circuitry that doesn't make any difference for you if you're shooting video. Yeah. Next question.
Scott Hancock in Tokyo writes in, following up on Paul's question from yesterday, understanding the complications of letting questions appear live, how about encouraging live chat for the frequent panelist requests for more details on the question?
Alex, what do you think?
Well, we have a live chat, oddly enough, and we use it all the time. So if you're not in Mukana, we'll use this as the announcement.
There you go. I was about to say I'm a minute from doing.
So we have a thing called Mukana, and so you can ask the questions via the QR code. But you ask this question inside of the tool that we have that we use for chat. So in addition to being able to ask questions, you can chat, and I have the chat right here. And so I'm looking at it all the time, and we're grabbing, I'm looking at it and pulling things out as people are announcing it. So we are definitely trying to take advantage of the hive mind. We've got a lot of smart people who can't be on the show in the mornings, but can be at work listening to it and typing in things, answers and other things like that. So we're all, that's all there. If you're watching and you don't know what that is, go to officehours.global/join, fill in the little form, and you'll get an email the next day. And that email will be how to So yeah, Scott. So you said, so I can elaborate here, just in case you're wondering if I can see your chat. So yes. So I think that is if you're asking for another chat that is related to this, we probably won't do that soon because we kind of there was a discussion about that. There was a discussion, and this is more of a Sunday question, so we'll leave it at this. But ask this again on Sunday, and I can talk to you about chats and process for a half an hour. So we'll leave it at that. This is really more of a Sunday question, but that it handled our announcement. So go to officehours.global/join, and we'll move on.
That's officehours.global/join. Let's go to the next question.
Coming in from the QR code, Marieli Shushamiera in Wabalo writes in, massive storms in the Gulf and other places. How do you get alerts and protect your production businesses and home from damages from rain, snow, and high winds? How about from civil unrest like in Tobago?
Courtney Gooden's going to start us off. Courtney?
Wow, that's a lot to take into account. Maybe that would be a better question for this old house. How to proof your home, storm-proof and civil unrest-proof your home. If you have a studio, I'd say don't put, if you're subject to flooding, if you're in a low water area where you're subject to, creek or river overflow or storm surge, if you're on the coast, put everything on the second floor. Don't put anything on the first floor of the building. So put your, expensive stuff up higher. Make sure you have windows that are, hurricane proof and not easily broken, perhaps with acrylic in it instead of glass. Protect yourself against civil unrest. I don't know if there's anything you can do about that. It's like protecting yourself from the horrible fires that we've had here in Los Angeles. Nothing would have prevented those homes from burning down in a 70-mile-an-hour wind that is sparked by any kind of small fire can just spread quicker than you can run and quicker than certainly any fire team can respond to it. It's much bigger and moves much faster than is possible. So then just carry good insurance. That's the other thing, is make sure your insurance is paid up and your insurance policies are in a safe place, maybe in a bank vault somewhere, not on the premises.
Alex Lindsay.
As far as fires, there are a couple articles about architects that specifically made houses that weren't going to burn, and they didn't. The whole community's gone, and that one house is still there. so it's still sitting there. But I looked at the house, and I was like, I don't know if I want to live there. Like, that's the problem, is that to make the house impervious. Now, I do agree with someone said in the chat, Paul said, build your studio underground. And that's exactly, if I ever get silly money, the first thing I'm doing is burrowing in. Like, that's going to be
Shire. Here we
Shire.
go.
Like, we're gonna build the Shire. What? I live.
Floods.
I'm where I live. If I put it in my lower yard, both ice caps could melt, and I would still be above water. So I think that I'd be okay. And by the way, Courtney, I have calculated that before we bought the house. I calculated it. Not that I'm risk averse. So but I think that. In all of those things, pay attention to those, a lot of the technologies out there. You got to take a look at it. I think that electricity is the thing that I'm kind of trying to figure out next, is just what backups are, because when we're in California, we lose power a lot. As far as civil unrest goes, you just have to pay attention. So there's one thing that's important if you go into a country and you're doing production, is you got to know who the RSO is, the regional security officer. They're at the embassy. You need to know who that. You need to know how to get a hold of the RSO, and you need to have the contact of. And if you're doing something important, you can usually figure that out by some calls. But number one is you need to know what is the hotline to the embassy. That's really important. Like, it's really important. It's really important that you check in anywhere that's a little less stable to make sure that they know that you're in the country, because they'll look for you if something goes wrong. The second is the head of security for the presidential detail in the country. That is even more effective than the RSO. But you have to know some people to get that. I've had it a couple times, and you feel much safer that way. But otherwise, you do have to have a plan. You want to have rainy day plans for it. A lot of times we have, not so much for whole civil unrest for a country, but in an event that we've worked on that is security heavy. We usually have a keyword that you can't say anywhere else, but if you hear it, everyone just drops everything and stuff, and then we give you a place to go. Like, this is the way we go, and where we go is generally not where everyone else told us to go, to be honest. Like, we take other routes out of the building because the secondary attack would happen at the place where everyone where they told everybody to go. So we go we go a different direction. But we've never had to do that. But we've always had the plan. So if there's a place where we see, as soon as we see guys walking, you can tell when guys or former operators are walking around, and as soon as we see those security officers, we start making plans. It depends on what the show is. It can be a corporate one, but we know what they look like and we know how they walk. And as soon as we see them, we're like, okay, there's a lot of security here, and so we're going to make a plan for those kinds of things, even if it's not the kind of event that we would think needed that plan. Then there's lots of things we do that we know we need to plan. So.
I'd also recommend just check out any apps that might be coming up. I was really surprised to find one called Watch Duty during the fires in California, and they did an exceptional job of not just following the fires, but resourcing where you could go for food if you've lost your house, what the routes were away from the fire. It's turned out to be a really interesting, and I think I'm not sure if it's an NGO that runs it, or it seems like it's a 501c3, and they had really accurate information. It was really time specific. They did videos of all the public broadcasts from the authorities during the course of the wildfires. And so I think there will be more of those kind of disaster-oriented apps for different kinds of public disasters. And it worked really effectively during the California fires recently. So just keep your eye on those. Next question.
Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas writes in, Sony is rolling out a new camera authenticity solution to separate real photos from AI-generated photos. How will this aid media pros? And he includes a link from Holtec.
Nigel, just how?
Yeah, so what they're doing is embedding a signature into the file, and they've been testing this with the AP. And so, by the way, it only works with Sony A1 cameras at this point, so it's not a very heterogeneous solution. And it's not clear to me what happens to that signature if you bring the photo into your machine and then update it. Do you lose that signature? So I just couldn't see that. I think, until someone produces a foolproof heterogeneous solution, the best answer for all of us is not to believe anything we see unless we can find an alternative source of that information. And that's now particularly true of photographs. It's been true of news for a long time, but now photos and images. Because without a system we all use and believe in, then nothing is real.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, the play here for Sony is, and they are working with Adobe and others to figure this out, is how to maintain that signature from cradle to grave. So basically, or glass to glass. So the idea is that everything along the pipeline, they're trying to build a standard along the pipeline. They're saying, we don't know what happens if you don't have it, but if you do have it, their argument is that means that signature is going to be very hard to spoof. Although it's a Nigel's point. I mean, everything's spoofable eventually. So, and how are you going to do that? But that's the play is that if the pipeline gets built, then somebody has to start it. It's kind of a chicken or egg thing. Somebody has to say, hey, we have a standard. We've thought through it. Try to get other people to adopt that standard. It's a relatively inexpensive thing for them to do because it's probably some kind of firmware thing. It's not like they have to put a chip in there, but it's not like they have to, boil the ocean to do this. So they put it in going, we have the standard and we're doing it. And trying to get Adobe and others to maintain that, so that when whatever edits you do, hold on to that. Or it's the idea is that you can't take it into it. The idea is for photojournalism, you take the photo and it never ever gets edited. If it gets edited, you lose it, and that's the point. Like it's saying this is the original photo, nothing was edited by it, and so that might be also what they're trying to do there for authenticity. It's a business play for them to try to, go after photojournalists who think that this is important, but the vast majority of the world won't care. I think that's the problem.
Perfect place to integrate a little public key encryption there. Courtney Gooden.
Well, the problem, like Alex pointed out, with photography, you almost never stay, in a professional situation, you almost never stay unless you're a documentarian. You almost never stay with the original photography. You adjust the contrast, and a lot of these checksum based integrity verifiers, that verify that not a single bit has been changed in that image. depend on you not changing the image at all, which means that you couldn't adjust the contrast or crop it or do anything else to the image other than look at the raw footage that came out of the camera. Now it can verify that if that you're looking at a raw file that came out of the camera, because it can do just simple checksum signatures, or it can embed a steganograph side for authenticity so that you know that it's not an AI generated image. But it's kind of hard to maintain that throughout the pipeline. As Alex was saying, you have to have everybody agree on everything that's going to touch that image, that they read it, authenticate it, make the changes, and re-authenticate it with a new checksum as it goes down the pipeline. And then you got to track who had their hands on this, who touched it, and did they have the proper tools that were locked down to maintain its accuracy throughout the pipeline.
Alex Lindsay.
And as a note, normally if you the one edit that you can do is actually color correction, because if the pattern is put in there and you're not doing any convolution kernels, so no sharpening, no blurring, no effects. If you're simply raising or lowering the value of the pixels through pixel operations, a lot of times those patterns will stay intact.
Next question.
Chris Lundy in Canyon Country writes in with a QR code looking for the easiest way to send SCTE markers to add breaks from a live event embedded in the stream, encoders, software, etc.
Alex, what can you do for us?
Yeah, so it depends. So SCTE is a marker, as alluded to by Chris, is a marker system to allow you can send all kinds of commands, but how it's mostly used is for ads. So it says, hey, there's an ad coming right now, and that allows a bunch of automation to be put out there, and activated by those SCTE markers. Now there are two types of SCTE markers typically. I mean, there's probably a lot of other ones, but the ones that I know of are the 104s and the SCTE 104 and SCTE 35. SCTE 104 is inserted into the VANC data inside of the SDI signal. So if you're on a physical and you want to put that in, VANC data is where we put captions. It's where Blackmagic puts their camera control. It's a little bit of very small amount of data that's going along the SDI signal that carries any kind of data that isn't a video or audio signal. So that's in line 21, and so that will holds the SCTE markers there. The other place it can be done is via API. So if you have an encoder, like a Videon encoder, the one that I'm most familiar with using SCTE markers is the Elemental Live appliances. But you could also do it with probably Media Live in AWS. There's a variety of other ones, and there's probably many others that carry it. Those are the ones I know, and those can be activated via API. So they're dropping those markers in, and they'll send those out with the encode. So the question is how you're going to generate those, and that's there's a variety of tools that can be used. These are the hardware tools are you're talking about real hardware to generate the SCTE markers inside of 104. Inside of SCTE 35, those are API calls typically that are going to tell those. So let us know how the SCTE markers are being generated, but that's how they get transferred. And typically when we're doing SCTE, and I don't know that this is a limitation, but we're typically using HLS or Dash.
Next question.
Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas writes in, just when I was getting comfortable with my original Insta360 Flow, they have a new model with HDR and ProRes. You can never get ahead. And he includes the whole tech link.
It sometimes feels like that, doesn't it, Paul? Alex is going to help us out.
I did take a look at this, Paul, before the show, and I did some research on it. And I only have two words for you. Holy smokes. What the what? It is the craziest handheld controller I've ever seen. This is incredible. I don't have one, and we don't have any relationship with Insta360 other than buying a lot of their links. I am just, as someone who's grown up doing this, I mean, they have this tracking system, and I know from talking to other people about some of their tracking systems, they work really well. Not that I don't know about this one, but this is $150, and then as you start to go down, it's got lots and lots of automation. You can control it and reframe it in your watch, on your Apple Watch.
Nice.
It does feel like it's there are some things that look like they're Android as well, but it looks like they really leaned heavily into so you can see that this is ProRes and Dolby Vision. So that I think that they're really focusing on the 15 and above for that. And so, or maybe 12 and above. But there are, and then there's all these effects that they're doing here. They can do these barrel rolls, digital zoom. This one is hard to do normally. It's. I mean, the videos on Instagram are never going to be the same. But I think that when I was reading through this, and then I know that a guy I think was talking about how great. I think it was a guy that was talking about how great some of the DJI tracking systems are now. You just kind of let it go, and it just starts following you around from the air. If I was a media creator that really was trying to produce everyday media for television, I'd be very concerned. The thing is that the tools at a very low price are really getting out of hand. Like where someone can produce shots that are outrageously good with these. And I have the DJI Osmo. I have the latest one on that. This is much better than that. I mean, it does a lot more than what this. And I'm trying to hold my pocket is smoking looking at this page, for this, because I use it a lot. So I've been using the Osmo since the first version, and I use it a lot for establishing shots. So if I have a live stream and I want a countdown clock, or I want a little montage as we get started, I'll go out, while the team is setting up, shoot a whole bunch of stuff of the city and, grab stuff out. I specifically get sunroofed cars, and we shoot a whole bunch of stuff, and, it's like 2 hours of driving around, and we come back and clip that all together. And so I've been using those for a long time. And this one is definitely the DJI has a lot to work on here, because this is the most impressive handheld phone controller that I've seen so far.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, and it even has that little telescoping rod on the selfie stick. And it also has this little selfie mirror right here, so that you can see yourself and use the good cameras on the back to do your stand-up stuff. And I got one word for you, Paul, with dealing with the constant flow of upgrades and everything these days. Do you have children? Do you have grandchildren? Put them in the inheritance line, downline. When something new comes out, just say, "Hey, kids, guess what I have for you for Christmas? Oh, my hand-me-downs from
exactly
this year."
FOMO, the initial fear of missing out. It's the dragon that keeps growing and growing and growing. Every time something really cool new comes out, it's like, oh, I wish I hadn't bought the last one. Anyway, let's go to the next question.
Steve Uroff in Madison, Wisconsin asks, Mukana's embedded YouTube window in Safari frequently asks me to sign in to confirm you're not a robot. A pure YouTube tab does not ask you to sign in. Why?
Alex.
It's not something we're doing. So what I would do is open it up in Chrome or Firefox and see if it does the same thing. If it doesn't, then it's some kind of security setting probably inside of Safari. Apple tends to be more aggressive about that than others. So I would look at that and see if it happens. It doesn't happen for me ever. But I admit that I'm using Chrome most of the time. So I haven't seen that message.
Don't forget, if you want to get questions in quickly, you can use the QR code. The QR code is something that we have. I'm going to toss it up here in the corner of the screen. That will get you directly into the question system. Somebody will review that, and if everything works smoothly, you will get your questions in pretty quickly into the show here. So it's one of the ways you can get questions in. Go ahead, Alex.
And you don't have to use the QR code. You can do askofficehours.global. So it's askofficehours.global. If you don't, because you might be listening to this and going, what is the QR code?
That's true.
Where is this?
QR code?
So really, the QR code is, if you're watching it right now, you can use that, but otherwise, askofficehours.global.
Thank you. Next question.
Jesse Koester in Glendale writes in, we're building a shoulder rig with a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K camera at its core. Is there a thumb trigger that works with the 6K to trigger records and cuts?
Alex Lindsay.
I can't think of one that would work. I was trying to... I don't know if there is.
There's a phone app that will trigger.
A phone app, but I'm thinking
and
like a
watch
hardware
app, I think, as well.
I think
if I could interject, because I actually have one, along with the focus wheel, the one that isn't the focus wheel, that is actually the zoom wheel, has a trigger that you can program to do anything you want, and it goes through USB-C.
There you go. Maybe that'll help you.
Yeah.
All right. Next question.
Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, BC, and on the panel asks, why is it so difficult to authentically recreate natural moonlight in a movie? I was listening to Director Robert Eggers talk about his goal and challenges in creating this for Nosferatu.
Courtney Gooden.
Well, you have to do it the way they did it in the olden days, which is just shoot day for night. Because, to simulate moonlight, especially a full moon, if you're dealing with, Nosferatu or werewolves, you have to simulate a large, mostly single source light that lights up the entire countryside. If you're doing an exterior, you have to have a single source of light that doesn't cast shadows in different directions or, lights up the entire forest. And it's difficult to do that with artificial lighting other than the sun. And so typically in olden days, they would just put a blue filter on the camera, underexpose it about a stop, use no fill light, and shoot day for night. Of course, the problem with this is the skies look light, which is you got to deal with that. And with compositing these days, there's probably a way to automatically select the sky and throw a black card in there to make sure that it doesn't look like the sky is brighter than the illumination in the foreground. So that's the way that you can deal with it. The other way is to use the air. What do they call it? The helium-filled giant balloons that you can put up and illuminate a large area from high up at night and go with that direction. But you have to kind of limit the scope of your coverage so that you don't have to light up far side hills in the background. So.
I think Courtney nailed it, and probably why those volumes are becoming so popular for shooting on, when you can put any kind of background, no matter how much depth of field there is, and control exactly how bright it is. Next question.
Robert Green in Los Angeles writes in, from affordable to best, what's a good in-ear monitor? Also, does age affect the choice?
Nigel Dessau is going to help us out. Nigel?
So we were actually having this question in the pre-show, so I'm grateful for this coming up in the show as well. But I just have two additional requirements. I'd like to spend less than $400 because I know I can easily spend thousands. And the second thing is, what's the best color for someone like me to have? Is black, white, clear? What's the best color? Because you can often choose the color of the in-ears.
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, I prefer clear, and there are a lot of good reputable brands, and the price points, there's quite a chasm in prices, so I will just quickly talk about the ones I'm wearing. So these are made by Westone Audio. These are the Pro X50s, which I just looked, actually, quite a few of them are on sale, and they've become discontinued, so I guess they might be working on a new product line now. But these are the Pro X50s, which have 5 drivers in them. But it's not just the number that matters. It's really the quality and the engineering involved. These were pretty expensive, but I like them because if you look at me dead on from where I'm looking at the camera, you can't really notice them. And they have an unbelievably thin wire. If I turn my head to the side, you can sort of see it in there, but it goes all the way in. And the wire is like just unbelievably thin. So I really like these. It's hard to go back once you experience them. They're just, they're very detailed. But the great thing about in-ear monitors, whether you spend $100 or $1,000, they're all going to roughly give you about 25 dB passive noise attenuation. They're really designed for people on stage, musicians that want to basically just block out all the noise and focus on the mix that they're listening to. Now, with companies like Shure, and I'll cut this so you can just see the price gamut here. So starting with the Shure SE215s, these are probably the most popular selling in-ear monitors. They are available in clear and black. They have a detachable cable as well. So these are just a single driver. And then they have stuff in between, of course, but going up to their higher end stuff, like the SE846s, which are $900, and they have, believe it or not, ones that are even more money than this. So there's quite a range, but again, when you get into the dual and triple driver, the thing that I noticed is that they produce a lot more detail. There's less exaggeration in certain frequencies, like less exaggeration in the low end and less exaggeration in the high end. So they're a lot more well-balanced, and I find that I can trust them a lot more for making critical decisions. Now, I still prefer mixing with large over-the-ear headphones, but because these are so accurate, I find myself using them quite a lot.
Jason Beisch.
I was persuaded by the audiologist who is behind Sensophonics to like get my ears molded, and I really liked just using my existing IEMs, and they'll even do AirPods Pro. So like if you want custom in-ear molds that will really give you incredible clarity with a perfect just pristine gel fit. Sensophonics will do that, and I liked it so much that I ended up getting earplugs too, because I don't know about everybody else, but I have not seen a movie in the last 5 years where the stereo is not turned too loud, and I've got a decibel meter, and it's like this is entirely too loud. So yeah, I have always worn earplugs in a movie theater, and call me weird, but you know what? My hearing's pretty good as a result.
Everybody's talking about music for them. I don't want my in-ears for music. I want them for spoken word, for doing things like monitoring the show via an IFB or an interruptible fold-back thing, where I just am looking for the clearest possible voice reproduction so I can hear directions. I go with these. These are in-ears. They're about $100, $99. This is a 360 Flex Dynamic, which is what I'm wearing right now. You can see that little in-ear piece has just the tiniest little flanged thing, which means that it's not going to completely seal your hearing off. If you need it, for example, I need it because I'm so close to the microphone with my in-ear that if I turn it up, I can get feedback from it. So I just pulled that little basket-shaped thing off the end of the driver, and I put a little clear earbud on it, and it seals things perfectly. It's real simple and easy to use. And you think that wire would be fragile because it's so small. It's not. These are used extensively in the security industry for security personnel. I think even the presidential detail and those kind of folks use something very much like this, if not this, to make sure that it's going to be incredibly reliable and that all vocal communications get through without degradation. Next question.
Coming in from the QR code, Bon Francisco in Fairfax, California writes in, I have a VanTrue N4 Pro dashcam. I drive 4 to 5 hours a day. Camera is set to loop at 3-minute intervals. How do I mark a frame so that I can find it when reviewing my footage from the day? Thanks.
Courtney Gooden.
Well, timestamps are your friend. And if this camera, I think this is the one he's talking about, the Nexus 4 Pro, and it has something called a GPS logger in here, so that it may be logging in metadata in each of those little 3-minute files. If it's just doing 3-minute files and then creating another 3-minute file, etc., or whether it's doing a destructive loop, that's the question. A lot of these dash cams are recording continuously, but they're overwriting themselves. So, if you set it to a 3-minute overwrite, it'll always have the last, when you hit that record button on the back, it'll always have the last 3 minutes and start recording continuously from the point at which you hit the button. So that if you're in an accident or something, it will be in the last 3 minutes if you're still conscious enough to hit the button within 3 minutes. Otherwise, I'm not sure how this one timestamps its files. If it's accumulating small short files in a folder, like every 3 minutes, it should timestamp them in some way, and it should have an internal clock. So make sure that either the GPS is turned on. If it has a GPS receiver, it may be pulling its time from the GPS satellites so that it's universal time and will always be accurate. So you can use time as a reference to find out, what you were doing at a certain time. You just go back to that, find the file that is time-stamped closest to that time or in the area of that time and start looking there. And a lot of them have the ability to turn on time mark in the frame itself, so that it is recorded visibly in the frame. So you can use that if you don't have the ability to monitor the time within the file itself via metadata.
Jason Beisch.
It took me a little bit to find that exact model. So if you push the emergency lock button, which I believe is on the back of the webcam, what that'll do is move the 3-minute segment around what's happening into a protected folder. So I think that's the fastest way to do it.
Sounds really good. Thank you, Jason. Next question.
Brent Below in Appleton, Wisconsin writes in, after much convincing, my wife has agreed to watch Roar with me. Does Courtney have any favorite shots in the film or interesting behind-the-scenes stories he can share from this one-of-a-kind production?
Brett's taking one for the team. Congratulations, Courtney. You're the expert on this. Dive in.
Well, if you're squeamish about blood or bad acting, I'd avoid this movie because it's loaded with both. Is there anything? It's well, let's say it depends on the quality of the print that you're looking at. There were good prints and bad prints. There were VHS dubs from the early years, and then there was the Blu-ray release of it that happened in the when was it? About 2007 or so. If you look at the ones from the 80s, not good. I don't know. There's so many horrifying scenes that remain in my brain that I don't want to recall. And many of them didn't make it into the movie. So, we had thousands and thousands of hours in the behind the scenes. As we were making that film, we all thought, a behind the scenes movie about the making of this film would be much more interesting than the film itself.
Film itself, that's
because the trials and tribulations we went to capture all that footage, plus the fact that we were involved with wildfires swept through the set. We were all there and had to evacuate 120 lions and tigers and elephants down the road to avoid the fires. And then a flood came through in the middle of the night when a dam burst, and I was stranded on an island with 3 other people from the editing room as we watched the entire lunchroom and the editing rooms go downstream, break up and go downstream, and in the middle of the night. And we could see people on the shore over there and kept shouting to them and shining flashlights and saying, "We're over here." And they said, "We can't get a helicopter in until it's light." So we had to climb up into the trees. That was the most harrowing thing, is the flood that happened, and that doesn't appear in the film itself. But just know that that film had a lot of starts and stops. The acting is not good, but it is some of the most incredible animal and person footage ever captured, and it will never be repeated because, PETA would step in and say, no.
Then the safety people on set wouldn't allow half that stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah, we only had 70 people injured, but nobody died, at least during the making of the film. At the wrap party, hey, we lost.
You're not vouching for that. All right. Next question.
Kyle Hammond, Chicago, Illinois, writes in, has anyone used or can recommend a migration tool for Spotify to Apple Music? Is this a thing?
I'm sure it's a thing because so many people go back and forth between these. I know Alex has some experience on this. He had a previous commitment he had to sneak off to, so he's not here. So, Kyle, this may be one of those circumstances where you want to come back when there's a different panel just to see. I do know that those are both incredibly popular services, and if I'm not mistaken, didn't Spotify just change their terms of service in some way so it's not quite the same as it used to be? So I would imagine there's a lot of migration going on. So this is probably be talked about a lot on the music playlist associated various social groups out there. So hopefully come back and ping us again on this. Jason, I was stalling a little bit. Jason raised his hand.
As the reader, I'm trying not to butt in too much here, but I would check SongShift for iOS and see if that'll do what you need.
Okay, good. There may be an app for that, as they say. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York writes in, I'm building out a new PC and can't get my NVIDIA card to show up in Device Manager or send any video out to my monitors. I'm also unable to install drivers until I get the card recognized on the system. Thoughts?
Oh, Courtney, can you help him out?
Well, that depends. It depends on your motherboard and whether it automatically recognizes a card plugged into the slot on the motherboard. And so make sure you might have to go into the BIOS and enable that secondary card, because most of the motherboards these days have the built-in Intel video drivers installed, and there's video ports on the motherboard usually. If there are video ports on your motherboard before you plug that video card in, you may have to go into the BIOS and set it to automatically recognize the external video card before it'll plug in and once the BIOS recognizes it, then Windows should recognize it. And some versions of Windows, the most recent ones, can actually access both. If you have the built-in, the motherboard or the CPU-based GPU, it can recognize that, and you can, and it'll usually the motherboard will usually come with drivers that lets you switch between the two or choose which graphics GPU is going to be used for rendering in certain cases, and some of them even have the means to. If you're going to be doing something graphics intensive, it'll switch to the NVIDIA card, and if you're just doing text editing or reading your email, it'll use the internal GPU of the Intel processor. So check your motherboard, check the book for your motherboard, and make sure that you have the BIOS settings correct to recognize an externally inserted motherboard. And if you do have those settings set correctly, you may have a bad GPU card, NVIDIA card, or it may not be seated properly, and make sure you're in the right slot.
Hopefully that helped you, Zach. Next question.
Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois writes in, given the camera authenticity conversation and new reality, do independent news stringers and freelancers simply upload completely unedited raw footage for sale, or do they take time to clean it up? Does this change the way the industry works?
So this is it depends kind of question. Most of my experience in this kind of thing came from the days when news stations had OB vans, and most of the time they are sending a direct feedback to someplace, and that's being captured and it's being edited in post. But all these rules have changed, and there's so much more connectivity via bonded cellular and things like that I think it's going both directions. It just depends on the organization and what you're trying to accomplish. You can certainly use all the technology we have now, and I noted bonded cellular, but there are other things to get a standard video feed out of your remote location and into a cloud circumstance where it could be immediately accessible to whatever back-end distributor you want to send it to, so that it could be used by your organization or other organizations. Most of the time, we don't really send out unedited footage because most camera operators don't shoot the way they used to. I'm hearing more and more from people who just let cameras roll for significant periods of time rather than looking for shots, executing shots, and stopping at the end of shots. Also, I know there are a lot of shooters who have developed skills at doing what are called press kit footage, where they kind of build useful shots in a string out, and they sell those back to a station that then uses those shots to create their own narrative by writing voiceover and having their news people package the original field footage into new and interesting ways, hopefully. So all these things happen. And also, raw footage tends to be really time-consuming to cut down properly, and you need a skilled editor to do that. So I would guess that it happens both ways. If you have those skills and can send them more useful, clean, packetized scenes, they will love you for it. But if you're sending it back to an edit system with an official editor there, they may want your raw feed, because I've often noticed as an editor sitting in my chair that something that somebody might have cut out, whether it was I left the camera rolling and moved and I got a swish pan out of it that was really cool looking, or something else that they didn't think was the right shot. As an editor, I go, if I use half of the bad shot and the second half of the shot that I was planning on, I can make a tighter story out of those two constructions than I can by just using what I shot in the field. So you got a whole bunch of stuff like this that goes into the decision about whether you're going to do it this way or that way. That's my 2 cents. Courtney, you wanted to weigh in on this?
Yeah, most local channels, at least in major metropolitan areas, have some means of you submitting shots for their news. Here's the local channel 7, Eyewitness News. Submit news, tips, photos, and videos, and they have a form online that you fill out, and it gives you guidelines. And it does require you to enter your full name, your email address, et cetera, so that they know who this is coming from. And generally, I think they only accept unedited raw footage. This is the safest way. And of course, they vet that. They have to vet that. And a lot of times they'll tell you to turn on your GPS if it's if your camera allows GPS timestamping of that footage to show when and where it was shot, and they will check that to validate that before they throw something up on the air that comes from an unknown source. And once they start dealing with a lot of stringers in the field that they know, then they don't have to do as careful a vetting if they know the person who's submitting, and they submit all the time, and they've always been honest in the past. So you have to watch out more and more these days with AI-generated video and the ability to edit, pull things out of a frame and replace them with something that looks like the background. Those editing tools are available now. So I think the news stations that do collect this viewer-submitted video of a natural disaster or a fire or whatever a news event is occurring has to be much more careful and much more diligent in their checking of the person who's submitting this to avoid being very embarrassed by airing something that is not real.
Also, don't expect a big payday out of those kind of things. If it's just an ephemeral thing, you caught a nice shot of a cat being rescued or something like that, they'll give you credit. But generally, there won't be a lot of money involved unless it has somebody famous or some unique occurrence where every station wants it. Then you can find yourself in a nice catbird bidding situation. But generally speaking, they don't value user-submitted footage gigantically. At least that's been my experience. Next question.
There is a.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Sorry, I was just going to say there is a disclaimer here that you sign when you submit something that says you give KBC LLC on behalf of ABC TV non-exclusive permission to reproduce, use, edit, and your image video on all platforms and all media now known or hereafter developed, including without limitation broadcast, online, streaming, social media, for any purpose, including not limited to promotional uses and worldwide perpetuity. So, hey, if you think you're going to retain rights to that.
Yeah. Yeah, the lawyers have been there before you. They know how this thing works far better than you do as a individual shooter. Next question.
Michael Forrest in Edinburgh, UK, writes in from the QR code, on remote calls, you have a choice of going in vanilla or bringing in a virtual camera that allows you to draw, share, and present your webcam. Question is, what do we call this? Are we coming in rich, or is this just a bare call? Ideas?
Jason, what do you think?
For those of us with studios, we call that coming in prepared, and we do it a fair bit. I think it really just depends on the purpose of the call. If you're doing it, just to kind of show off the cool stuff that you can do, then it can easily become a distraction. If your purpose is to illustrate it and convey your ideas more effectively, you will turn some heads if you do it well.
So to me, this is the difference between a presentation and a feed. If I'm just coming in and I'm not doing anything, I'm just sending them a feed. That's pretty simple. If I'm doing a presentation, that's a different thing. Then the use of cutaway slides, audio, whatever you want to package into the presentation is something that people expect. So I think those two terms are kind of where I'd start. Just off the top of my head. Don't forget, we are a not-for-profit, a 501c. If you'd like to donate something to help our cause, we would truly appreciate it. Just go to officehours.global/donate, and you can help us keep this operating. Next question.
Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas, writes in, Gemini Deep Search at $20 a month is the current winner for AI. Grok is the dark horse with hardware infrastructure. Apple Intelligence is a bust. Agree?
Nigel Dessau is going to help us figure this out. Nigel?
No, I don't. I'm sure, all of your favorite AI tools are your favorite AI tools. If you believe Gemini is the best, it's the best for what you need it to do. I have to say, I use ChatGPT every day. I find ChatGPT covers exactly what I need. Gemini may do different things. Grok, I get with my X subscription. It's fine. For most of us, I suspect most of these are undifferentiated. If you have specific needs, you'll probably find them catered for specifically or tastes. The other thing I want to make a point is that Apple Intelligence, while I'm not trying to claim it's the best thing ever, I use it every day, and it's free as an Apple user. And what I use it for is when I write a document, when I write a text as a dyslexic, I highlight it, go to writing tools to get it to rewrite. And I find it very useful that way. So I think we have to be careful as we're in the sort of AI arms race. We don't do what technologists always do, which is go for a feature war and decide who has the best, WYSIWYG bits and flashy Spotify stuff, and think about how we're trying to use it and the benefit we give. And we're going to find there's multiple and they do different things.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, it changes daily. I think, the race between Gemini, between Google and OpenAI, Microsoft and Perplexity and Claude, all the different players in this field. One day you'll see this one's ahead, the latest test, this one came out ahead and on this type of task, but they scored lower on this type of task. This one's better on math and this one's better on accuracy. This one's better on speed. Grok is really fast, but hey, it's not too accurate. So it depends on what parameters you're interested in. Are you interested in accuracy or speed or multiple or agency? These days they're adding agents to search now that can go out and operate your software and collect information for you and take actions on your behalf. So it depends on what you're looking for in AI. Apple Intelligence is still a little bit behind, I think, because I think their accuracy wasn't as high as they had hoped. So I think they pulled access to it for the time being until they get those problems ironed out. Maybe Nigel can tell us if you're just in a beta program or if they've re-released that Apple Intelligence to everyone again. I knew they pulled it off for a bit.
Nigel?
Yeah, so I am in the beta program. I don't think it's any different from the general one. What they pulled off, as I understand it, was the summary of news stories. The rest of AI works fine. So if I'm writing a text and I highlight the select all and then click on it and find writing tools, then it will rewrite it to look more professional or whatever you want to do. All of that works. That's fine. That's not been withdrawn. So there's little bits of Apple Intelligence all over it. The bit that everybody wants to talk about is when you ask Siri a question it doesn't know, does it go back to Grok, go back to OpenAI? To be honest with you, I haven't checked that recently because if I just want to ask a question like that, I go to OpenAI to do it, so ChatGPT to do it. But the rest of the base writing tools, I think, work all fine. Lots of the sort of the embedded secret, not secret, but hidden stuff is working fine. The thing I think they've withdrawn, as I said, I think is the summary of the news articles because they changed the context of some of them.
For me, it's the Friedrich Nietzsche process. I'm happy with Apple Intelligence only because when I'm looking into the abyss, I don't want the abyss looking back at me. And I still have this weird feeling on all the generative AI sites that every time I interact with them, they are kind of keeping an eye on me going, what are you looking for? Why are you looking for it? How can I feed you more of what we think you're looking for? So the fact that it's largely on machine as opposed to everything going out into the giant LLM just kind of makes me feel a little more comfortable. Next question.
Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas writes in, what's a great small case for a Sony ZV series camera?
Alexander Knight, you got any suggestions?
Yeah, I bought, my cameras are different, but they're similar size to that one. I just found this generic one on Amazon. I took a chance on it because it wasn't very much, about $40. Never heard of the brand before, but it's pretty well made. It's compact. I like it. It's got a lot of different pockets. You can see the interior here. It's got these little dividers, which you can put them all in or take them out, rearrange them. So you got space for the camera body, you got space for maybe a couple lenses, power supply. Then the other cool thing about it is that you get this compartment on the top for more lenses, which is also very handy. And of course, on the front, you've got the pocket there where you can put your cords and maybe some SD cards, that kind of stuff. And then it has this handy part here on the back here. So you can it's got that little loop where you can just slide it onto your luggage. And it's $40. So you can find all sorts of ones here on Amazon for that type of price. So I would have a look at something like that.
Also, what are you going to use it for in terms of, I have a couple of quick draw cases that allow me access to my camera if I'm traveling. I can just literally pop a top, reach in, pull out my camera ready to shoot. That may or may not be useful to you. So that's just one of the other things to think about. How are you going to use it? I think we're pretty much at the end of the show. I was thinking about whether we were going to do one more, but I think it's too much of a discussion, so we'll push it back and go next time. Thank you all for paying attention here at Office Hours. We appreciate you being here every day to justify what we do by being the audience that listens to everything. A huge thank you to all of the producers. That's everybody who asks questions here every single day. We appreciate it. Without you, this whole show doesn't work. To the panelists who freely give their time to answer questions and share their expertise with the world, a huge thank you to all of our panelists now, today, and through the course of the history of the show. And to our amazing back-end crew who sit at desks, at computers, at screens all over this planet. And I'm not being hyperbolic by saying that. Literally, we have people on almost every continent who contribute to this every single day, and we appreciate them tremendously. Telect traversal today, 40,000 miles. That's 64,000 kilometers, 313 million bananas for scale. Don't forget after hours. Also, don't forget the shows we have in the evenings. Tonight, I think... What shows tonight?
Extra Hours, I believe.
Extra Hours is tonight. Yeah. Are you going to be on it tonight, Jason? Did I hear you say something?
It just depends. I was on last week. It's always a lot of fun. It's just a matter of whether or not I get through my clients for the day and have enough time to eat before it goes on.
So Grant Whitehead will have that tonight. On Thursday, I know David Paskin does his show, so we've got shows continually popping up, so pay attention to those. We have some great people who are starting to put things on after hours, regular hours, and of course, after hours itself. Our 24/7 operation is live all the time. Once you become part of kind of the Office Hours family, you'll get the links to that and can go on and assemble a small group of people to talk about whatever problems you have. It's an incredible resource. Thanks very much. We will see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye now.
I thought of a
banana for scale.
I love it.
addition to the
banana
Marvel universe that, thanks to Bill, the Captain Hyperbole. Yeah, he's the best superhero than all the other superheroes combined. Just ask him.
There's never been a superhero anywhere near as Captain Hyperbole.
Great franchise.
My hyperbolic ray will annihilate you a whole lot.
It'll make
a whole very lot much.
Other people on Earth. Imagine.
I have the most powerful ray in the universe.
That'd be fun. I see a radio play in there.
Captain Hyperbole is my new hero.
Yes.
But what is his critical weakness? Because all good superheroes have a kryptonite. So what's
Automatopoeia, without a doubt.
Kryptonite.
Poetry.
That's right, verse. Those sonnets, Captain Hyperbole just
man.
can't handle it.
It's blank verse.
That's right.
Minimalism.
That was fun.